Well, joining us now to talk about this, we've got Oliver, of course, and Ian, who we introduced just a moment ago. But gents, thanks for coming on today, I should say. When it comes to what went wrong for Brendan Rodgers, what was it that he didn't quite get right at Liverpool? Because he spent a lot of money, brought in a lot of players. Was it the way that the club was managed from top down, from hierarchy, from the Fenway Sports Group, or was it that the players just didn't gel?
I think it's more a case that, and everybody's saying this right now, you go back to losing Luis Suarez, you can't replace a world-class talent like that with a mishmash of 5 or 6 average to very good players. It's just not going to provide that same X factor that you need to push into, say, the top 4 of the Premier League and succeed in the Champions League. So even though bringing in someone like Mario Balotelli, who can be world-class on his day, he's not consistent like a Suarez, and that's what's really hampered Rodgers, losing that one star player and not being able to rebuild and find somebody to take that place.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems is that transfer committee. It's this American style of doing sports business. Rodgers very evidently didn't have control. You look at some of the signings, okay, he got Coutinho in, he got Sturridge in, but some of the other players, the £20 million misfits, the Kovacs, this world, who just didn't deliver. And I think it's that whole root and branch philosophy, and I think Rodgers didn't buy into that. The interesting thing is going to be, if Klopp does take over, how keen he is to embrace that. But if you look at the way he worked at Borussia Dortmund, he did work with that sort of executive level of talent spotter.
When we look at Klopp and what he has done with Borussia Dortmund, he got them to the Champions League final a few years ago now. Is he the right man for Liverpool? Is he going to fit in with Liverpool's philosophy, do you think?
He's what Liverpool want and say they want in terms of being this old-style club who will give time to Klopp and allow him to build his new empire, if you will, at Anfield, because that's what he did at Dortmund and was very successful with it. The difference is, though, is that you're in the Premier League rather than the Bundesliga, and the Premier League doesn't take any prisoners in this sort of thing. Fans are fickle, I hate to say it, but we are as football fans, and if there's not immediate success, Klopp will suddenly find himself perhaps under a lot of pressure after maybe 8-9 months or so if things aren't turned around quickly. And he seems like the kind of manager who will want a bit of time. Whether he actually gets it and what the clubs say right now is a completely different matter.
I think what's going to be brilliant to watch, and completely different to anything we've ever seen in the Premier League, is this style of play, this chasing down players, the pack mentality. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely going to be fantastic. I mean, the Borussia players said when he first came in and introduced this, they were completely shell-shocked. Their training is brutal, but they don't allow any of this sort of sit back, play the ball from the back. His philosophy is, even if the home side, for example, is defending, you're on their fullbacks all the time, and he refers to it as heavy metal football. So whether it works or not, it's going to be a fantastic watch.
I'll tell you what, and he sounded out Didi Hamann of what it would be like to go to Liverpool. It looks like it's going to happen. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but he's a character as well, isn't he? His press conferences are very entertaining. He's a really good person to have in the Premier League. I think it'd be very
as I said in the report, he doesn't shake hands with players, he gives them bear hugs. Exactly. It's going to be a brilliant watch.
He's a good laugh, but he also is ruthless behind the scenes. In front of the cameras, he will be very emotive and kind of be very jovial in press conferences, but with the players, he gets the best out of them, and he doesn't take fools gladly, if you will. If people aren't putting the effort in, he will get down on them.
Oliver, Ian, thank you very much indeed. More from you later on in the programme. But let's talk about a story that's come out of Nigeria over the last day or so. A football campaign has been set up via social media to essentially reinvigorate the Nigerian Football League. So a man has essentially started a league, an alternative league to the Nigerian National League, on his social media account, getting some teams together and setting up this operation. What do you make of a story like this? Because it's clear that they are, most of the Nigerian media focuses on the English Premier League as their sort of main sort of football outlet, if you like. Is there a serious situation that they need to look at from within their own country for how their own leagues are managed and developed?
Well, there's been a lot of criticism around the Nigerian Football Federation. People saying it's corrupt and it doesn't do enough to help promote Nigerian football, and I think that has particularly kind of been shown when you look at the rise of Premier League football in Nigeria and how many people will spend more time discussing that on social media than their own football league, both club and international football as well. And it almost just shows that with a little bit of ingenuity, that you can actually, if there's a problem, you can find a different outlet to help promote your almost homegrown football through social media. And you can, it's not a permanent, I don't think, kind of rival to the Nigerian Premier League, if you will. But what it has done is it given people another opportunity to actually relate with football back again in their own country and start to build something that perhaps might take off and get a few more thousand people playing and watching football again.
I think there's fascinating parallels here with cricket and Kerry Packer. You look at what happened when he revolutionised cricket, a very staid sport. He brought in the coloured clothing, the coloured balls, and nighttime cricket. Everybody said, never going to work. And, you know, 10, 20 years on, it's completely transformed the landscape. So I think we could have the seeds of a revolution here, because at the end of the day, if a sport isn't working with the public and somebody comes in, offers an alternative and they want it, it could be very big.
Absolutely. We wait and watch that situation. Absolutely. It really does seem like an interesting story that's developing. Let's move on now to the Rio 2016 Olympics. The story here is that they are cutting back on budgets for the Olympics next year. 30%, I think, is the figure that's been mentioned. How do you think that's going to affect the Games in their operation and how it's going to essentially look?
Well, they've said they're going to try and be creative, if you will, with the cutbacks, and that always raises a few eyebrows when people start talking about being creative with this sort of thing. They've said it's not going to interfere with any of the actual events, which is a big thing. You can't interfere with those events. The IOC would get very disgruntled if budget cutbacks affected those. That is what the Games is all about at the end of the day. But from what we've seen in terms of doing promo videos in-house and using tents instead of building big buildings for infrastructure and for kind of having the media tents and things like that. It seems like a smart way to do it, and it's a really good way to win the hearts and minds of the Brazilian sporting fans again in the home nation, because they've been so frustrated with how much money has gone into big tournaments as opposed to into kind of public services elsewhere around Brazil.
I think the problem is it's sport as politics. You saw the old Soviet era where they wanted to cherry pick the massive events around the world. It's the same with Brazil here. Had the World Cup, you've got a huge stadium on the edge of the Amazon forest that's now empty, not being used.
Yeah.
And you can understand the public saying, we want roads, we want electricity, we want decent sanitation, and you're spending all this money basically on a prestigious project. They've already got problems. We saw earlier on the BMX riders unhappy with the facilities there. Massive pollution problems where they're doing the sailing. So I think this is the tip of a very dangerous iceberg for Brazil.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at what they have to live up to with London, with Beijing before that as well. There's it's a marquee event for world sport, and all eyes of the world are going to be watching, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, as you say, it's a marquee event. The Olympics is arguably the biggest event in world sport because it involves so many different people who perhaps don't follow the big sports around the globe. This is their one main thing every 4 years. So it's got to be done right. You can't afford slip-ups, but at the same time, you have to make sure the stadiums are sold out and that the package is presented well.
Oliver, Ian, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to speak to you as always. Now it's time to take a look at what's been getting the world's sporting attention on social media today.